Good morning. Welcome to today's webinar. My name is Josh. I'm going to be your presenter today. We're here to talk about a couple of reports in Church Windows Accounting today, the Treasurer's Report and Balance Sheet. First of all, as I'm trying to develop kind of talking about these reports, a couple things came to mind for me initially. And first of all, it's a difficult topic to cover these two reports in a 20 to 30-minute webinar event because there's a lot of things you can do with these two reports and their importance and the options that you have for reporting on them. There simply isn't enough time in the webinar event to cover all of it, okay? But as with any reporting, in terms of, it doesn't matter whether it's Church Windows or any other program at all, folks, is you have to explore the reports that our software has and work with your folks who are wanting the output or the data output of it to find out what selections for these reports they want and what work for them, okay? The Church Windows program is very flexible in many ways. And so there isn't kind of a standard cookie cutter way or method of doing things, okay? So, one church's finance committee may want one thing, and another different church's finance committee may want a completely different treasurer's report or balance sheet as well. So you've got to work closely with folks to determine what's going to work for you, okay? And work for their reporting needs, okay? That's ultimately, I kind of wanted to put that out there initially is, today you're not going to sit there and you're not going to hear me say, this is the way you have to do this. Doesn't exist, okay? That's not going to happen. Those words aren't coming out of my mouth. In terms of that, you decide what options on these reports are best for you. That's it, okay? So to move on, the two of the most important reports in accounting are the Treasurer's Report and the balance sheet, okay? So let's talk about the Treasurer's Report first. Can be found here under reports here under our multiple report groupings, or I like to go up to reports and export up here in the upper left, financial in the upper left corner, and right here from the menu choose Treasurer's Report. And as you can see up here, balance sheet is up here as well, okay? So we're going to choose our Treasurer's Report, okay? So for some of you, what I'm about to state may be, incredibly obvious. For some of you, it may not. I think it depends on your level of accounting or bookkeeping experience that you may have, whether it's in Church Windows or any other program for that matter, okay? Treasurer's Report might also be known as the Profit and Loss Report or the Income Expense Statement, but no matter what you choose to call it, its main purpose is to report on the current year's income and expenses or whatever year you're selecting, okay? We're in 2024 at this point. The report now is going to report on accounting year 2024. I can choose any of the previous years I want, but in a nutshell, its job is to report on the current year's income and expense, actual income coming into the church and the actual monies or expenses being spent, and compare those to the budget if you have it entered, assuming you have one entered, okay? Which I hope most of you do. The budgets serve a very specific purpose as well, okay? So this report only reports on income and expenses only, nothing more, and compares it to the budget. That's it. That's all it does. I cannot choose assets, liabilities, or funds here, okay? No vendors. I can't get fund beginning balances or ending balances, okay? Just income and expense totals, okay? As with most of our reports, we have several tabs across the top right here, okay? And we're going to be looking at a little bit of those in general on all of them. But on virtually all the reports in Church Windows, folks have a tab called Options, okay? Most of the time, the Options tab will have a year selection on it. I like to remind folks, if you want to look at a report for a prior year in accounting, you don't have to change the year to go look at that. You can simply choose the year here and run it for whatever your period you're wanting in that year, and you've not left the current year. And the same is true for the balance sheet, as we're going to see here in a little bit, okay? But typically the options tab is where, in this case, you're going to choose your year. You're also going to choose your reporting period. Then there could be any number of things on here. There's no kind of standard information that is always available on the options tab. It's going to vary based on the report. So pay attention to that. Do we want to include accounts with zero balances? All right. That's an important one. If you have, in January or February, when you've got only, postings to a handful of accounts at that point, do you want to report on all of your accounts, even if they have no activity, if they have no activity there? Do we want to show that? Because it will add length to the report if you include accounts with zero balances. We get calls a lot, folks, saying, well, I've got accounts with zero balances and they're still showing on the report. Here's the thing, folks. Every column on the report has to have a zero balance. So it can't have a budget amount entered. It has to have nothing under period activity, no year-to-date balance, nothing. It has to be zeros across the board. Can't even be marked as a budgeted account, okay? Because a budget amount of zero in terms of church windows is still considered as an amount, okay? It just happens to be zero. So just FYI. I don't check accounts with zero balances too terribly often unless I'm troubleshooting a problem. Over here to the right, we've got our reporting period, okay, for month or for quarter, okay. This is a common question. Most of the time, I get a lot of support calls from folks going, well, Josh, I want a treasurer's report that shows my actual year-to-date income and expense totals for there. I don't want a balance just for September or just the quarter. Well, that's on the columns tab. We're going to come to that here in a minute. We're going to get to that, okay? But right here under fund, let's say you enter your budget for just your general fund only, no other accounts. You can choose to show just the income and expenses on the treasurer's report for a specific fund if you wish, okay? But if you want to see all the income and expense accounts, then just don't select a fund there. You can also have the software display an asterisk for over budget items. So if an account happens to be over budget, whether that's income or expense, it'll show an asterisk on that if it's over budget. Also, do you want to omit the cents from the amount of columns for the treasurer's report as well? Again, it just shows the most recent or whatever the last dollar amount was with no pennies, okay? But generally, once you've moved past the period and the information on the options tab, the real power in church windows comes with your columns, okay? Over here, you see on the right side, we've got the column here under visible columns, year-to-date balance. That is the actual income and expense totals through whatever period I choose under this tab right here. So if I were to choose quarter and choose, say, quarter 2, April 1st through June 30th, that year-to-date balance column on the treasurer's report will be January through June 30th of 2024, okay? There is no range here that says January through an ending month, okay? So whether you choose month or quarter, the year-to-date balance column here will be the start of the year through the end. And if you're on a fiscal year, folks, it'll be whatever the first month or day of the year is through whatever, period or month you choose or quarter that you choose, okay? So just an FYI, it's a very common support call that we get about that is, well, how do I get the actual year-to-date balance totals? Also, all right, this is probably one of the most important things to understand about our treasurer's report in terms of how it functions and works, okay? Annual and year-to-date columns are logical. What I mean is I'm comparing a year-to-date total to an annual total. The software knows how to do that logically. Similarly, if I have month and period activity, those two are going to logically tie out as well, okay? I cannot expect, so in this case, year-to-date balance, so my year-to-date balance is not going to logically compare to my column called monthly budget, because one's a year-to-date balance total, one's an annual total, and another one is basically based on a month, okay? So basically, that's simply the one thing that I would encourage you to keep in mind about that, because we get that on support calls a lot too, is I've got my treasurer's report and the numbers aren't checking out. And typically what we find is folks are trying to compare columns which don't logically make sense. All right. Period activity in this case on the right under our visible columns. And again, folks, forgive me, visible columns on the right are the columns or information columns that we are asking or wanting to show on the report. The available columns on the left are those that are not currently displayed but are available to display or add to it if we wish. Okay, which kind of goes back to sort of what I was saying earlier about exploring the reports. Maybe if if your readers of your reports are unfamiliar with what Church Windows can offer, maybe I've suggested to users add all the columns to it, distribute it to your folks, and say, hey, here's all of the information columns that Church Windows can display on your treasurer's report. Let me know if there's something you want to remove or reorder or change the order of, and we'll make it happen before next month's meeting. Okay, so again, if they don't know it's there, they're not going to be able to guess it, and so show them, give them that, and then when you need to, just come in here and edit and remove and change the columns, and we can basically just go, okay, double click on a column and it moves it over from one side to the other, and I double click on the other and it moves it back. Or we can use the arrows in the center here. Let me get out my drawing tool here, and I'm talking about this right here, these arrows. And to reorder the columns under visible columns, I would use the up and down arrows over here on the right. Okay? So that's how we can reorder or just choose what columns make sense, or the columns we want, and put them in an order that makes logical sense. And if you notice here on the right, okay, we've got year-to-date balance adjacent to annual budget and annual budget remaining. The software will know how to calculate those because they are year-to-date or annual amounts. If I want to choose or compare period activity over here on the left, I would have to choose something that referred to monthly budget or percent of budget month, or that's it, because everything else now is year-to-date. So the two that would logically tie out to period activity are monthly budget and percent of budget yet month. Okay? They refer to the period or quarter that I'm asking for. Treasurer's report is also one of the few reports that actually can include previous year information as well, and this would be the previous year actual. Okay? All right, we're kind of getting thin on time here, so I kind of move along here. You've also got custom account groups. So if, you can't choose a range of accounts here, but you can create custom account groups that include select or random accounts if you wish. Okay. So if, say, I go to trustee accounts and I check that, I'm going to check accounts with zero balances because I don't know if those have activity. And then I click print. It brings up just those accounts that I've added to those trustees, to that trustees group. Okay. Okay, so let's back up. Where did I end? Detail tab. You don't want to see the detail of all of the accounts. Salaries and benefits is a common example. We don't want to see each person or employee's salaries, compensation. That's a private matter. So we uncheck the detail tab and click print, and it hides the actual individual accounts and just shows us grand totals of all of our employees' compensation. In fact, I can do that for all of my treasurer's report accounts as well. So if I come up here and I go collapse all, and I just uncheck all of my income and expenses and click print, notice it brings up just subtotals only, no income and expense totals at all in individual income and expense accounts. I work with churches, folks, who like this report and use it. It provides them with the information that they want. They're totally happy with it. But you can go into this, the detail tab, and you can drill down and you can check to include detail of specific subtotals, all you want. It's your choice, okay? Just a way of being able to customize reports that may make them better for your readers. And again, folks, you can adjust your column width here on the right. All right. let's jump into our balance sheet. So we go up to financial again under reports, export, balance sheet, also known as our statement of financial position. Okay. This report shows just in assets, liabilities, and funds, no income and expense accounts at all. Again, I can choose a period, a year, any year I want. I can include accounts with zero balances or omit those. I have to choose a period again for either month or as of. Okay. Typically, it's going to default. The software will default to option, to month. But if I wanted it through a particular date, I can click the as of and choose a specific date if I wish. Okay. Similarly, I can truncate cents if I want, if I don't want to see if pennies are unimportant. But if we simply click print from here, this will show our balance sheet. So again, assets, accounts the church owns, checking accounts, savings, investments, money markets, CDs, fixed assets if applicable. Maybe receivables if you track those. Then further down, liabilities, money the church owes, payroll taxes in any form, whether that's federal, state, or local, any payroll or other payables that are entered and not yet paid, even a balance under accounts payable, maybe pass-through monies, or long-term liabilities such as like loans or mortgages. Okay. And then finally, when we go down, our fund balance accounts or our equity accounts. Okay. This is where the real power in church windows for churches lies. Okay, is in these accounts called funds. All right. Folks go, oh, I understand what assets are. I understand what liabilities are. Then eyes glaze over when they talk about funds. On a traditional for-profit balance sheet, we might see what? One account called equity account called owner's equity. Well, in church windows, because you're a church and you need to track money, designations of money, okay, that money that's being given to the church for a specific purpose, if they want to ask it, want it to be used for that, you may have to set up these accounts called funds. Virtually every church will have a general fund or an operating fund. But then anything after that is up to you. Missions, memorials, youth fund, music fund, you can even track net fixed assets if you wish under both funds and assets. Okay, now that's not a requirement, but you design the funds. Okay, I've seen churches that have one fund or two funds, designated fund and undesignated fund. Okay, but I've seen other churches where they've got 50 funds. Funds carry balances forward. These accounts on our balance sheet will carry balances forward from one year to the next that the treasurer's report will not. Income and expense accounts that we saw in our treasurer's report will revert to zero to start the next accounting year. They will not carry balances forward. So if you have an unspent balance of income and expenses that are not already set up in their own exclusive separate fund, you may have to set up new funds to start the new year. But again, that is the beauty of the accounting system that you have in church windows. Okay, is funds carry balances forward that income and expenses will not. Each of these funds, with the exception of our net fixed asset fund balance down here, all have at least one income account and one expense. And in many cases, like our general operating fund, we might have a dozen or two income accounts and we might have several dozen expenses. It depends on what purpose the fund serves. Okay. It also may depend on how you want to compare your assets to your funds. Okay. So you can always add new funds throughout the year, but the assets themselves should always only ever represent the assets the church actually owns. Physical accounts, whatever financial institutions. You might have a one-to-one ratio of assets to funds here. It depends on how your chart of accounts is designed and constructed, but the software does not require it. Okay? Similarly, we have a columns tab like we did on our treasurer's report. We have account number, account name, We've got year-to-date balance. That's the one that most folks are most critically concerned with. I want to see where I am in the year. So if I choose it, say, through September 4th, and I go to print, it just reveals my total of my assets, liabilities, and funds through September 4th of 2024. I can include beginning balances. That means the start of the year. Doesn't matter what month I choose at that point. So if I click print, the beginning balance now represents January 1, since we're on a calendar year, or whatever, if you're on a fiscal year, the beginning balance would represent the first day at midnight of whatever your first day of your fiscal year is. Doesn't matter what period I choose. I can also have these other columns available over here. And when we go back, many of those are in relation to this format called monthly comparative and annual comparative. Commonly unknown or underused. Basically, the monthly comparative, if I choose month September 2024, let me backdate that. I'm going to go back up too early because I don't have a lot of data in my database here. So if I go to March and choose monthly comparative, and if we go to columns, we notice it's added previous period balance, amount difference period, and percent difference period. If I click print, this is now a month-to-month comparison. So right here, my previous period balance was, in this case, February. Year-to-date now is through March. And the amount difference in the period is the 1,160. Let me go up here to my upper right here, and let's change our page. Let me see if there's other columns here I think I'm missing. There are. So the percent of difference for the period. So that's March of 2024 to February 2024. Okay? I also can do the monthly comparative, but with regards to the previous year. So if I now choose as of 9/4 as opposed to month and choose monthly comparative, and notice we now go to period year to date and period debt balance. So in this case now, this report is now comparing September of 2024 to September of 2023. Okay, again, monthly compared to annual comparative. Okay, so it depends on what you choose under balances regarding versus, when you're choosing these annual versus monthly comparative. Okay, so play with that if you're unfamiliar with those. Oh, I should have gone to the columns tab. I'm so sorry. That's what I meant to do. Yeah. So right here, the annual comparative is when I choose, what am I choosing for March of 2024? This is then showing year-to-date balance through March of 2024. Previous year-to-date balance would be March of 2023. Essentially the same thing with both of these reports would be as of that for the annual comparative. Similarly, detail options on that. So if you don't want to see the detail of all of the accounts and just show subtotals, you can do that, folks, okay? But these reports report on different things. So it's important that we understand, or you understand, what those are, okay? Just be aware that column changes are made on reports are saved by user login name, username. So when you make changes, the software remembers your column selections automatically, okay? But things like period will always go back to whatever the current month or year or day is. It won't go back and it won't resave those, okay? Custom account groups, again, once set up, are available for all users. So that is not username specific. So if I create custom account groups, anybody who logs into Church Windows can see those custom account groups, but other folks may not have the same column settings or selections that you do, which is fine.